Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. First off, I wanted to discuss KPMG holding a networking event. They're going to be holding a networking event tomorrow, June 4th, from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern in the United States. And this will enable people to text chat live with KPMG recruiters. This is good for people that have questions about the recruiting process and future opportunities with KPMG. So since COVID-19 and the various lockdowns around the world, it's going to be hard to network with recruiters. And this is a way that the Big Four accounting firms are trying to connect with recruits. And I thought I would let people know about this in case they're worried about future open positions at the Big Four. They can start networking virtually since it won't be easy to do that in person. And this is a good way to do it. And I'm sure the rest of the Big Four accounting firms will be doing this as well. So it's good to get used to this. If you're worried about there being positions in the future, this is a good way to find out some more information and to try it out to see if this virtual networking works for you. And I'm sure this is going to be part of the quote unquote new normal that everybody's talking about. You're going to have to learn how to network virtually, but it's good anyway because so much of what the Big Four does nowadays can be done remotely. And it's just good to start using remote technology right now. The next thing I wanted to discuss was Deloitte and a recent tweet from their consulting leader in the United States. He made a little video on Twitter letting people know how to work from home since we're already talking about working remotely. And I'll play that clip for you now.
I'm Dan Helfrich, CEO of Deloitte Consulting. What a privilege to captain my team of 50,000 plus consultants every day, but particularly in a time like this. And one of the things we always talk about is culture. And how do we make culture practical? How do we make it affect the way people make decisions every single day? One of those ways is what we call everyday equations. Little glimpses into choices that we all can make that are very practical and bite-sized. One of those equations that matters a lot in this moment, working from home does not equal always working. In an interesting way, I see people feeling more pressure now to be visible, to show up even though they're showing up virtually, to prove that they're as productive and efficient as they were when they were in, quote, a normal working environment. Not always working means drawing boundaries, being proud, not ashamed of it. It means recognizing that in the rhythm of these days that are so unique, there needs to be moments for things other than work. We need to be cognizant of the environments and the moments that everyone is feeling and then adjust. And we need to be talking frequently about the importance of breaks, because breaks provide oxygen to the mind, oxygen to the soul, to do other things. And breaks allow you to pay attention to the stuff in your environment that isn't work. For Team Helfrich in the Helfrich household right now in this moment, breaks are for little snacks. Breaks are for walks across the neighborhood. We've gotten really good, or my kids would probably say pretty good, at throwing the Frisbee. So please make sure, like I push myself every day, I push my family every day, I push all my teammates every day. Make sure that working from home does not equal always working.
So in this clip, he tried to talk about the struggles of working from home, but he also pushed the message of everyday equations, which is a slogan that Deloitte is trying to use right now, but I'm not sure it really makes sense to me in this context. But if you're interviewing with Deloitte, or even if you just work in Deloitte, you have to figure out these slogans that the Big Four use. They all have their own slogans, and everyday equations is one of them. So that's like something you're going to need to learn. And as you saw, he used it on this platform, and it doesn't really fit, but he kind of pushed it in there. So this is something they're trying to get everybody in the firm to adopt. But in that clip, he said that everybody needs to take breaks from working from home because you can really work around the clock and you can just stress yourself out all day long. And he said that breaks provide oxygen. Well, I mean, it's interesting that he released this right before that they let a whole bunch of people off, because they're going to let all those people off in the U.S. that are going to have a whole lot of oxygen now since they're going to be completely free since they laid them off. But I think this is more of a type of social media for recruits, because a lot of people in the Big Four know that they want you to stay busy all the time. They make it seem like that you don't have to be busy and you can take all these breaks, but in my experience, that isn't reality. And also, all he talks about is like taking breaks. He doesn't talk about setting hours. And he also talks about setting boundaries. But to me, the easiest way to take a break or set boundaries is just by setting a schedule, like just working from 9 to 5 or something like that. But he doesn't even mention that because he knows it's not realistic. He knows that they laid people off, and the people they have left, they want them to work as much as possible. So he can't really say that he wants people to limit the amount of hours they work. But I think this also shows how difficult of a job working at the Big Four accounting firms is because in one area, you're always having the Big Four leadership tell you to work less or tell you to find work-life balance. And I think one of the real reasons they stress work-life balance is for recruits, because if people knew the amount of hours you had to work and the stress you had to work under, it wouldn't really be an appealing job in college, and somebody might take a different route instead of going down accounting. But if they say everything's changing, it's work-life balance, we have everyday equations, then people think it's a lot better than it really is. But I just wanted to cover that because I think he's right to some extent that if you're working from home, you might feel like you need to use the various virtual services like a chat feature or a virtual conferencing feature to check in with your boss a lot more to show them how hard you're working. But I think this is just part of Big Four politics, and you have to change how you interact with your boss based on their personality. Some people want a lot of check-ins and status updates. Some people set dates during the week that they like to get updated. Some people want to get updated all the time, and some people don't need updates and they just trust you with what you work on. So you have to figure out what your boss likes to do and work with them that way. I don't know about this everyday equations and taking a break and setting boundaries. I think that's difficult in the Big Four a lot, and you just have to change how you work based on the people you work with and the assignments you work with. Especially in this economy, it's a little bit difficult to implement what he's saying. And lastly, on another note about Deloitte, there's some news that came out in Charlotte that discussed a little bit more about the layoffs, and they said that there's over 1,000 employees in Charlotte, and they're not sure how many are going to get let go. But another thing the article mentioned is that Deloitte currently has about 60 openings in Charlotte, and that's another thing we covered on here last week was job openings that Deloitte has. And you're going to see this a lot with the Big Four accounting firms. You're going to see them laying people off, reducing hours, reducing pay, but also hiring more people. And this is because they're trying to get rid of people that they're not satisfied with, or they're not trying to get rid of them. They have to get rid of them because of the economy and also to maintain partner pay. But they're also still going to be hiring people because they're hoping by hiring people they can find really good people. And especially in the experienced job market, they're going to try and hire experienced people with really good skills that they can hopefully translate into winning more work for their clients. Especially if you have a skill set of working in industry, then that's really good, because a lot of Big Four accountants, they come in straight from college and they don't really understand the basics of a ledger or making journal entries. So if you have more experience doing that, maybe working in a small accounting firm, working in industry, then that's good. So you're going to see these things that don't make sense, where you're laying people off, cutting pay, but also hiring people. It's confusing, but you also can stay positive because they're still hiring people. But if you work there, it's going to be confusing. Working in the Big Four is always confusing because they're large entities. But there's still going to be opportunities out there, especially if you try and diversify the amount of skills you have. If you're just going through the motions and you're trying to have a basic accounting job or a basic tax job, then it's going to be harder for you to get a job than if you round out your skills with technology, or you get focused in a certain area like international business or a certain industry. Just try and get as many skills as you can to differentiate yourself from others. But it's also making yourself aware of initiatives that the Big Four are doing, like watching these videos of Deloitte and learning their slogans like everyday equations. And then you go right into an interview and you know all this stuff already. You bring it up because you've been looking at it, you've been listening to it on this podcast. And it just shows how plugged in you are to the Big Four environment. And a lot of them love talking in this lingo. So if you already know the lingo, then it just makes it that much easier to fit in and get working from day one. So those are the updates for today. To get future updates, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Big Four Accounting Firms. Thanks for listening.